Hi and welcome back to Spirit Lounge. Hope you guys are doing well, and welcome to the chapter 2 of the Katha Upanisad. The last one was very long. I hope you enjoyed it. There was a lot of content in there. Not all of it was narrative from the Upanishad itself. There was appending narrative. So this one's a little bit shorter, but I've slightly appending narrative, the same amount of appending narrative here as well. So again, let's get straight into this, and I hope you guys enjoy it all the same. Okay. So chapter 2, the Katha Upanisad. Again, the Upanishad was Katha Upanisad, just one of many, written 1200 to 400 BC from many sages and seers who went into forests and contemplated places, and this is where their esoteric writings were pulled together, called the Upanishad, the fourth writing, appending the four Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva. And this is the book that we're going through. The Katha Upanisad, again, is about the story of Naciketas, who's a son of a poor father who gave all his belongings away and decided to give what he had meager as offerings to the priest. The son didn't understand why he was giving such meager and feeble cows to them, and thought that he would also be sacrificed as part of the offering because he was as to fulfill his father's offering to the priest. He didn't understand that. The father got mad and says, "Oh well, I'll send you to death," and he goes off to Yama. Takes it literally and goes to Yama, stays there for a couple of days. Yama finds him and then honors him as a Brahmin and then gives him offerings and food and water, because he stayed there for 3 days or 3 nights without food, and then gives him 3 boons, which are 3 wishes. And first wish he wished for was that his father would not be angry at him, would receive him well and love him after he's sent home by Yama. The second one was to understand the nature of the universe and how immortality is gained in heaven. And the third one was the nature of death. Is death real? What really happens? And he talks about the infinite spirit. And in the universe, he talks about the manifesting force of fire and the forms in nature, the form developed from fire in the creative force of the waters of Hiranyagarbha, the golden gem, and so on and so forth. And so that's what it goes beyond that. And then he finishes talking about death. And this chapter 2 goes on and expands that narrative off to a conclusion. So, and I've added a lot of other things in here. There's not so much of the narrative, more appending thought in here, which I thought was useful and to add into this. So the self is not to be sought through the senses. This again is Yama speaking to Naciketas. Excuse me. The self is not to be sought through the senses. The self caused pierce the openings of the senses outward. Therefore one looks outward and not one within oneself. Some wise man, however, seeking life eternal with his eyes turned inward, saw the self. So this is talking about, again, what it's saying is why people seek things outwardly. Because the explosion of knowing from within, once we touch the spirit and allow it to emerge from within us, allowing it, the choice we make, that has a spark of energy, of knowing, of force, which we experience within our mind and our senses as outwardly expressions, feeling. When they're actually coming from inward, we feel that they're coming from outward. They're coming from within into us from without, but actually they're coming from within to without. And that's what this is saying. Hence why we look at things externally beyond us, gods, deities. We seek God above us. We always look above, and we just close our eyes and seek and speak to the divine within us. Because there's nothing outward from us. It's all within us, and it's also external to us. It's in everything around us. The divine. We are all in the divine. Everything that exists in the divine, in other words. So it's not external, it's internal, because it's internal to all things. And the comments here, openings of the soul, that they are open because they open outward. The sense they explode outwards with this spiritual force, and that's how I seek externally. The Upanisad calls for control of the senses, not the suppression of them. Yes, we must manage our souls to help us understand what we are receiving. That includes the mind. Manage our senses, rather. We lead outward lives to have vision of truth, but we must turn our gaze inward. And this is a poem called Dejection from Samuel Taylor Coleridge. It's a British poet which I liked. If it were in vain endeavour, though I should gaze forever on that green light which lingers in the west, I may not hope from outward forms to win the passion and life whose fountains are within. So it's a little poem that expresses what we just talked about having inward expression to understand the nature of all that is. Okay. Must have missed something there. There we go. And he goes on with some other passages. René Descartes, who's a French philosopher, said, "The necessity of turning away from external appearances and rising to the spiritual realities which self-knowledge reveals," which is the internal self. And another comment here, the Upanisads points out that God is more manifest in the soul of man than in the world outside. It therefore demands a conversion of the spirit on itself. And the narrative continues with Yama. The small-minded go after outward pleasures. They walk into the snare of widespread death. The wise, however, recognizing life eternal, do not seek the stable among things which are unstable here. That's what he's talking about. He doesn't seek external things because the internal force is stable. External things are unstable. And this is another one, "Abide by Me." It's a song by Upanisads, and I really like this, so I'm going to repeat this to you guys. Abide with me, fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens, Lord. With me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpers, oh, abide with me. Swift to its close ebbs out life's little day. Earth's joys grow dim, its glories pass away. Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changest not, abide with me. I fear no foe, with thee at hand to bless. Ills have no weight, and tears no bitterness. Where is death's sting? Where, grave, thy victory? I triumph still, if thou abide with me. Hold thou thy cross before my closing eyes. Shine through the gloom and point me to the skies. Heaven morning breaks and earth's vain shadows flee. In life, in death, O Lord, abide with me, abide with me, abide with me. I thought it was a beautiful song from Upanisads, and I had to look that entire one up because it only had a small section of it in the book, and I actually looked up the entire song and I put it in here. Okay, the narrative goes on, say, that by which one pervades form, taste, smell, sounds, and touches of love, by that alone one perceives. What is there that remains known to it? This unknown to it, this is that. So it's talking about the spirit, which is beyond that is known from the senses. Comment here, self is the ground of every possibility of thought, is act of knowledge. So the divine self is the source of all possibility, because the divine grace itself is the source of all possibility. We are living and existing and experiencing in a realm of infinite possibility and probability, of manifestation from the depth of the devoid, of the darkness of everything, the darkness of pure love and essence and eminence and home. This is the realm of manifestation, of possibility and probability. Our spirit is also that same realm. That by which we perceive both the dream states and waking states, have known that as the great omnipresent self, the wise man does not grieve. Okay, the individual soul, etc., are one with the universal spirit. Now, I'm sure etc. wasn't actually in the original heading, but that's what was in the book. He who knows this self, the experiencer as the living spirit, close at hand, as the Lord of the past and the future, one does not shrink away from him. This is that. He's talking about the spirit being the same as the Lord of the past and the future, past and the present, and the spirit, the living spirit, which is close at hand, close to us, within us, external, internal, from within to without. He who was born of old from austerity, was born of old from waters, who stands, having entered the secret place of the heart and looked forth through beings. This is that. So this can also talk about the spirit that went into us and looked forth from our being, but also can talk about the Hiranyagarbha, who is within the Vedas regarded as the one the eon, or the deity that who created the universe from its own golden germ being nurtured from the waters of creation. She who rises with life, the Aditi, which is the mother of the gods. Mother of the gods is the mother of all the gods being the air, sky, Father, Son, etc. She who rises with life, Aditi, the soul of the gods, who stands having entered the secret place, is that. When the sun rises and where it goes to rest, in it are all the gods founded, and no one ever goes beyond that. This is also talking about, remember in the Upanisads, deified everything, from every sense, every part of the senses, everything within our natural world, everything above our heads within the cosmos, the sun, the planets, that which twinkles in the sky. This was all deities and gods. That which manifests, the sun, the giver of life. All of these things in the cosmos were founded, and this was regarded as the infinite space. And we do not go beyond the infinite space. Well, actually, this is all really a manifestation of the divine. We need to go beyond the manifestation altogether. Failure to comprehend the essential unity of being is the cause of rebirth. The title actually says it all there. We don't really need to read much. We will read it in any event. Whatever is here, that is there. Whatever is there, that too is here. Whoever perceives anything like manyness here goes from death to death. In other words, that those who perceive and attach to the material realm of multiplicity, plurality, associate and attach with it, and just cycle back in and out of manifesting life. By mind alone is this to be obtained. There is nothing of variety here. Whoever perceives anything like variety here goes from death to death. Again, non-multiplicity is the difference. The eternal Lord abides in oneself. The person the size of a thumb resides in the middle of the body. Well, it's actually in the heart space here, and cascades energy out. Knowing him who is the Lord, one does not shrink from him. Like a flame without smoke, the same today and the same tomorrow. This is that. So you can see how this is all written. We have to always remind ourselves when this was written. 1200 to 400 BC. The way things were written there, the associations with aspects of the body, the breath, the nose, the eyes, the structure of the body, the natural, the air, the water, the fire, the wind, the multiplicity of things, the moon, the sun, the planets, the things that shine, the constellations. Everything around was associated with the divine and therefore used and deified and used as to abstract and exemplify the divine itself. And the methods in which the word was spoken, very, very old ways of speaking in Sanskrit, and then translated with by those from many centuries ago in the 18th or the 19th centuries, translated those Vedic into Old English. So this is how we're reading it today. Remember, this was all in Sanskrit originally. Had to be translated by those who knew Sanskrit, Hinduism, and English, Hindi and English, and therefore translated it in English of those times, which was obviously a much older version, a way of speaking English than the way we translate things today. So always remember that when you read these old texts. It's frustrating sometimes when we read them. They're convoluted, they go all over the place, they tend to speak in riddles, but to them this is not riddle, this is clear English. But to us who are more used to much more simplified use of grammar, it sounds like it's going everywhere and it's difficult to extract meaning from, but it is there. Sometimes you have to read it a couple of times. Okay, let's continue with this. The result of seeing variety and unity. Excuse me, I hope that hasn't... okay, I went into full screen there. As water rained upon a height flows down in various ways among the hills, so he who views things as varied runs after them. As pure water poured forth into pure becomes the very same, so the self, the seer, who has understanding, becomes one with the Supreme. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux said, a drop of water poured into a wine loses itself. So this is what's talking about the water rained upon high flow goes down a hill, and the person who follows it just runs after it. This is what it's talking about, dilutes themselves with this polluted, this ferocious water that is impure. And this is what he's saying about a drop of water loses itself in wine and takes the colour and the savour of the wine. This is those who attached with the material plane with humanness then colour themselves with the material plane and humanness, and then therefore are what we call lost. So in the saints, all human affections melt away by some unspeakable transmutation into the will of God. So in other words, they move away from those human affections, attachments, determinations, by attaching themselves to the divine space that they sought from within. Okay, the individual self. The city of 11 gates belonging to the unborn. Uncrooked intelligence. By ruling it, one does not grieve, and being freed is freed indeed. So what are these 11 gates? Well, I looked at that, and it's called Esther Dadastravam, is possessed of 11 doors. The 7 of them are the 2 eyes,